I owe my Trump-supporting friends an apology. I've been critical of the Trump presidency these past 4 years, and I'm still exhausted from the experience. But, to be fair, President Trump wasn't that bad, other than when he incited an insurrection against the government. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Separated children from their families, tear-gassed peaceful protesters on Lafayette Square so he could hold a photo op holding a Bible in front of a church. Got impeached. Had the worst jobs record of any president in modern history.
Called veterans and soldiers who died in combat losers and suckers, and suggested that people should inject bleach into their bodies to fight COVID. Thought that Nambia was a country.
Summoned Pennsylvania state legislative leaders to the White House to push them to overturn the election. Tried to punish Amazon because the Jeff Bezos
banned transgender people from serving in the military.
Incited an insurrection against the government.
He took advice from the My Pillow guy. Are you ignoring me?
Refused to release his tax returns, withdrew the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal, claimed that COVID would magically disappear, called the U.S. Senator, forced his cabinet members to praise him publicly like some cult leader, withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accords, insulted his own cabinet members on Twitter, just from a cruise ship because it would make U.S. numbers look higher, retweeted a video doctored to look like Biden had played a song called Fuck the Police at a campaign event.
Interfered with plans to relocate the FBI because a new development there might compete with his hotel. Seemed to believe that Frederick Douglass is still alive. This is crazy. Fucked up the census.
Falsely claimed credit for getting any NATO members to increase their share of duties.
Told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. Claimed that Andrew Jackson could have stopped the Civil War, even though he died 16 years before it happened. Deported veterans who'd served the country because they were undocumented. Oh, fuck.
Tonight on We're Speaking.
Russia, Russia, Russia.
From Russia with Love. A photo, the leaks, and Trump's Justice Department.
It was all bullshit.
It was even worse than we thought. Here to help us understand the depths of the corruption is former Navy JAG attorney and the executive director of Fight for Florida's Future, Pam Keith. Plus, we're back with our OFFS Awards. We're Speaking starts right now.
Welcome to We're Speaking, everybody. I'm Lisa Senecal, and I am here with the incomparable Maya May.
Hello.
Those tweets were something else. But tonight we are going to be talking about the Department of Justice or Department of Injustice under Trump, the rules, the norms we've really got to return to, and the imperative, absolute imperative of accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because the rules are there, right? Unfortunately, the rules are not being followed by everybody. It's kind of like how the rules say no peeing in the pool, but the GOP realized there's no purple dye in the pool, so they're just like peeing all over the place. And the thing is, like, the rules are fine, but yeah, it only works if everybody actually follows them.
Yeah, they really seem to think that the rules were made for somebody else. Rules are for suckers. And that apparently is what they think the Democrats are. So that tweet string that we started reading right at the top of the show, that was amazing. There are more than 240 items in that list. And there is this fantastic person you should follow on Twitter. Her Twitter handle is @AmericanEthical. And this tweet string goes on and on with the unbelievable things that Trump did during his presidency. And so many of those related to his abuse of power, including weaponizing the DOJ and treating it like it was his personal shady as fuck law firm.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. It really actually did take me all day to read all those. And it feels like when you're laying in bed and you're looking at a ceiling fan and it's like flipping around, like, but it's made up of like 1,000 deadly blades. And all of us were like staring awake, like, oh my God, like, please don't fall on my face. The only problem is it's not a ceiling
4
fan.
years.
It's our judicial system. It's our democracy. And it's like ready to fly off the damn ceiling. I saw this quote, which I believe was in our opener, and I want to come back to that. It is where law ends, tyranny begins. It's etched above the window. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing I love more than a good quote etched into a building, and that's an especially good one. The authoritarian abuse under the judicial branch was just absolutely mind-boggling, and the total lack of concern about undermining our democracy, or sort of the point of undermining the democracy, was a Trump administration specialty. We know that to have this, if we're going to hang on to our democracy, it's going to require faith and trust and checks and balances. And he tried to destroy all of those.
Yeah, and checks and balances, like, not just buzzwords from 8th grade history class. Like, these are important words. And Lisa, you know, I'm a total word nerd. And so I did look up the etymology of justice. I don't know if you know this. It's from Latin, justitia. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced, but it means righteousness or equity. And then upright. And so I think that's really interesting, because Trump, what he's doing is neither upright at all. It's like he's turned our justice system into a sewer, so he can crawl through it like the rat he is. No shade to actual rats, of course.
Yeah, and what makes it so bad is that was his whole purpose. Like, he is actively trying to destroy the democracy. And I say he is actively, not he was actively, like it ended when he was president. Mm-hmm. He is still actively trying to destroy our democracy. And he's using the guise of free and fair elections and a stolen election as the way that he is attempting to do it. And, you know, he's not going to stop. He's going to be relentless about it. And here's why. This is a great quote that I ran across when I was reading some of the Johns Hopkins Democracy Project, which I suggest people check out. Liesl Hintz wrote, "The goal of a competitive authoritarian is to get the people to just give up." And that's really what, not just Trump, but the GOP at this point is trying to do. Just come at us, eventually hoping that we will get exhausted, we'll give up, we'll decide it's futile. That ain't going to happen.
No, we're not going to give up. We are optimistic, and there's a reason why we're optimistic, is because we know that our democratic systems are actually pretty strong. They're not easy to tear apart. And, you know, we've heard that on the podcast. I think it was with Stephen Levitsky that was talking with Reed about all of the structures that have gone into place. And so our democracy, it's actually very strong. It can withstand this, but in order for it to withstand this, we all have to get engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to take all of us working really hard together, not giving up, not thinking it's futile. And not thinking that it's a sure thing, that democracy is always going to be there. Democracy is something that we actively have to engage in and protect and fight to defend all the time. Because there are folks like Trump had at his Department of, we have labeled the Injustice League. And, you know, we're going to have to fight these super villains. So these are our four fellas that
the Injustice League.
The Injustice League from their lair on planet GOP in their hall of injustice. These supervillains are working to undermine liberty and justice for all. They're disgusting.
They are disgusting. We have Conan the Bilbarian, his superpower, the ability to always go lower, even when you think he's reached the bottom.
And next we have Mark Meadows, villain name, the Skid Mark. Which I can't believe we actually came up with that. Mark's superpower is endless willingness to say, "Thank you, sir. Can I have another?"
And let's not forget the Jeffrey Clark. Clark Kent is his villain name. The ability to devise failed plans to destroy the U.S. Department of Justice. That's his superpower. If the Roadrunner is the Department of Justice, Clark is definitely the Coyote.
Yes, he is. And our final member is Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions, the incredible sulk. And he is, he's another one who just came back from more abuse all the time. His ability, though, is, maybe it's a good thing. He has the ability to show people that he is, in fact, not as bad as they come.
Still pretty bad,
because we had Bill Barr. Still pretty bad, but it could get worse. And we thought, like Jeff Sessions, how could it possibly get worse? And then it did. So we do want to hear from you folks all the time. You always have so much phenomenal stuff to add. So this past weekend, we asked you, what do you think is the worst injustice that America suffered because of Trump? And once again, you came through.
You sure did. We have a tweet here from Gertrude Maud. The administration using the Department of Justice as a personal law firm, obstructing justice and political appointees, bending to the administration, weakening our institutions. And then we also have Bob Mutascio saying, instigating, aiding, and abetting an attempted coup against the United States.
And Francina Atkins says he profiled and degraded race, religion, infirmities, etc., and encouraged the people to speak out publicly about their phobias and misinformation about races. He then went on to create distrust among the media and the easily influenced by continuing to utter untruths.
Yep,
also known as lies.
Yeah, exactly. And then Katie Basuner tweeted that it was the extreme vilification of immigrants, radicalization of white supremacists, and abolition of truth, which actually leads us to our first OFFS nominee of this week.
Our first nominee for this week's Oh, for Fuck's Sake Awards is a name you might know and wish you didn't. Georgia Representative Andrew Clyde. He might appear to be a tedious Wonder Bread bologna sandwich, but last week he had an encounter that damn near retired his star on the Oh, for Fuck's Sake Walk of Shame, and not in the fun way. When he encountered DC Metropolitan Police Officer Michael Fanone, one of the officers beaten by insurrectionists on January 6th, trying to protect the Capitol, and Clyde's sorry ass, Clyde refused to shake his hand. A truly stunning performance in which he simultaneously disgraced himself, dishonored those who protected him, and sucked up to Trumpists. Can we just give him the award now? Can we?
Wait and see if we're going to give him the award. If you haven't caught the latest Lincoln Project podcast, you missed a nonstop laugh riot with Lincoln Project co-founder Reed Galen and Lincoln Project's communications director Ryan Wiggins. They talked about Trump's sad, pathetic bro appeal.
Yeah, so many sad bros to appeal to.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times in 2016 I had people tell me they were voting for Trump because he would say what other people wouldn't say. It's like, well, other people won't say it because they shouldn't say it. Women look at men like that and see weakness. They see insecurity. They appeal to other bros, but other bros are just as lost as they are. There is no appeal to it.
And you can subscribe to the Lincoln Project podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you find your podcast, because they're all over the place these days. And I absolutely do love our podcast. You do have to give it a listen. Coming up, I'm super excited. I've been following her on Twitter. Definitely give her a follow, Pam Keith. She's no holds barred, the 2018 Democratic nominee for Florida's 18th congressional district and former Navy JAG officer. Pam Keith does join us later tonight.
Yeah, she's a political strategist, attorney, the executive director of Fight for Florida's Future. And with DeSantis as governor and Rubio and Scott, Florida's future needs all the help it can get. Pam joins us. We're going to have an amazing conversation with her about how Trump used and abused the Department of Justice and what we need to do to get our democracy in a safe place. We will be right back after this quick message from the Lincoln Project.
FBI operatives were organizing the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, according to government documents. Huh?
Why hasn't that officer that executed Ashley Babbitt been named?
Republican Anna Paulina Luna says a Republican opponent, William Braddock, planned to have her killed.
And I'll tell you this, you would have another 1917.
It doesn't look like an armed insurrection when you have people that breach the Capitol, and I don't condone it, but they're staying within the rope lines in the rotunda.
Huh?
This is not how you heal this nation. You come down here and you try to interact with people, you be nice to people.
It's long past time that Mr. Biden fire Fauci, and that's why I'm proud to co-sponsor Fire Fauci.
Almost 6 months since the insurrection at the Capitol, the House and Senate coming to an agreement that will award the Congressional Gold Medal to the officers who defended the building. Seems like a layup, but not for 21 House Republicans. They just voted against it.
Huh?
I greeted Congressman Clyde. I was very cordial. I extended my hand to shake his hand. He just stared at me.
Actually, Donald Trump did win California.
Windmills all over the place to ruin our land and kill our birds, to kill everything.
Huh? Are you shocked? We're shocked. We shouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, hi. Just calling from South Carolina. I love what you guys do. And I'm answering your Facebook question about the biggest injustice that occurred during the term of former President Upper Pelvic Fat Pad. I think spying, using the Department of Justice to spy on Democrats, on reporters, on Don McGahn and his wife, their phones. I think getting away with the Ukraine scandal, the way they just fired lifelong, hardworking civil servants, ambassadors, just never being held accountable for everything that Paul Manafort and his campaign did with Russia. I just worry that not being held accountable is ringing a bell that can never be unrung. And now all these minions are going to try to act like him in the future in office. And they're going to know we can probably get away with this stuff because we won't be held accountable. Thank you.
Welcome back to We're Speaking. So in just a second, Pam Keith is going to join us for a deep dive on Trump's misuse, abuse, and absolute torture of the Justice Department. But first, it's kind of worth remembering how we got here.
Yeah, in short, it all started with the leaks.
Leaks are like bees. Bzz, and Trump is like a cartoon bear with his head stuck in a jar of honey. And these leaks sting. Ouch.
The pasty white guy on the right in this picture is Sergei Kislyak, the ex-Russian ambassador to the U.S., who is hanging out in the Oval Office with Trump, just yucking it up with nobody from the U.S. listening in, but plenty of Russians. Both Michael Flynn and Jeff Sessions had secret conversations with Ambassador Kislyak that were leaked, and that we would, eventually have lead to really bad things for them, which I can't feel the least bit sorry for them about. So, who was the leaker? According to our guest, Pam Keith, who's former Navy JAG Corps officer. In order to find out, Trump broke a long-standing protocol that you don't use the machinery of the government to attack a political player for political purposes. But hey, that's just how Trump rolls. So that's what's going to happen. Keith was the 2018 Democratic nominee for Florida's 18th congressional district. She's an attorney, political strategist, and a fierce, fiery, awesome advocate for restoring faith in our democracy and playing hardball. And she's still fighting for Florida and for our democracy.
Yeah, definitely hardball. She calls it as she sees it. I've been following her on Twitter. It is zero fucks given. Exhibit A, pull up that tweet. There we go. Manchin thinks we should negotiate with this garbage person. It's not an insult. I just want y'all to know it's more of an observation.
It really is. And if any actual garbage persons were offended by that, it was meant differently. Because it truly does fit. We were trying to decide, is he like garbage? He's not worth recycling. Yeah. We could compost him. He's bad. Yeah.
Bad.
So let's bring on Pam. Pam, we are so excited to have you here and we're speaking tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure. I follow both of you and I just admire and respect you both.
Oh, yeah. You are mad fire on Twitter. You are.
Yes. Pretty much. Everything
much
you tweet.
Fun.
Yes. I'm like, retweet. Yes. Second that motion.
Yes.
Love the fire. Love it. I was like, she's saying all the things I want to say.
I know. I really don't need to tweet anything myself anymore. I just retweet Pam. Yeah.
We should all just retweet.
Well, I think it is. I take it as a personal mission to be provocative, and not just for provocative sake, but to force people to think out of the conventional way of dealing with problems. We're dealing with an unconventional threat, and we just cannot be wed to conventional responses and think that that is somehow going to deal with what we're dealing with.
Yep.
I love that.
Agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to start out just asking you, you have a fascinating background because you were born in Turkey and lived there for the first 3 years of your life. Your dad was an ambassador and he was also one of, was it the 5 men of color who were on the Midway? So what a fascinating guy your dad must be. But being in Turkey, I assume that you still have a connection to that country and an affection for it. And you've watched what Erdogan has done and Turkey's slide toward authoritarianism. It's got to be hard to see. Are you seeing that same thing in the United States today?
Absolutely. And it's not just what Erdogan did. Because remember, when he was first elected, he was considered quite a Western thinking, progressive kind of guy. And he started to get drunk on the power that he was getting because he was so popular. Then he got challenged and he started to fear losing that power. And so he started to clamp down on opponents, on journalists, on anybody holding him accountable. And eventually it got to the point where he was embracing sort of a religiosity on Turkey that really prided itself on being a secular Muslim state, right? He was moving it back towards a religious state in a way that most of Turkey's sort of educated and Western thinking people were just not going for. And in order to continue to have wage. Exactly. And interestingly enough, I mean, that's not the only country, Lisa. I lived in Brazil when it was under a military dictatorship under a guy named João Figueiredo. And so I was, 12, 13 years old when friends' parents disappeared, when journalists were terrified to speak out, when artists and students were disappeared in the middle of the night. So
you've lived it. You've lived it, because I lived in Argentina for 8 years, and so I'm seeing some really frightening things as well. And you brought up something really interesting about the drunk with power, because I see that, and Trump got into power partly because he was the outsider, right? But what happens when we take a CEO? That's a strong word for what he was. When you take a CEO and put him in charge of a government.
Well, that's the danger. First of all, he thought every component of government was for his personal benefit, because that's what every component of Trump Organization was for, right? It was all for his benefit. So he introduced this concept that everybody in government had to be loyal to him and serve his purposes. And he got the GOP to back him up with that by calling anybody who didn't feel like they served him the deep state. No. These people are supposed to be serving the United States of America. The president is the executive, but he's not the owner. That's a different concept. But Trump believed that he owned all of the United States now because he won the presidency. I'm now the owner of all of this. This is all mine now, and I can make it do what
right. Yeah, including the DOJ, which was really terrifying. That what he did with the DOJ, I mean, this is just a lifelong pattern for the guy, right? You dig dirt on your opponents. If there's nothing there, you make shit up. And now he had this incredible amount of power in his hands.
Exactly. So he starts out with this leaking that you mentioned earlier. He wants to know who leaks. Well, okay, there's ways that he could do that. He could ask his staff. He could have people sit down and talk about where they've been. He could ask, but he says, no. I can spy on Americans now because I have this capacity to go into people's cloud data and pull their text messages, and I can monitor who they're talking to. So why don't I go monitor members of Congress and their families and journalists and their children so that I can find out who's leaking? Well, first of all, it is a very serious indictment of your leadership if all of your team is leaking on you. That's them telling the American people they think you're dangerous. But second of all, the reality is he wanted to justify this frolic and detour into people's personal information by saying, oh, well, this was all classified. He was never concerned about what was classified. He never got a clearance. He put a bunch of people in positions of power without a clearance, and he didn't care about the classified nature of the top secret information he was sharing with Kislyak and the Russian Secretary of State who came over here. Like, he wasn't caring about security secrets. But the fact that he revealed a security secret is not in and of itself classified. It's embarrassing. It's a bad thing, but it in and of itself is not classified, right? What he revealed was classified.
Right. So,
but that's not justifying using the Department of Justice to find how that leak happened.
Right, and that's breaking a long-standing protocol you had mentioned earlier. And so is this a line that has been crossed that we can't come back from? Where do you see things going from here?
We absolutely could come back from it if the Attorney General that is currently in place believed that his mission was to undo the wrong, not just stop doing the wrong. And those are two different concepts, right? You can start where you are and just keep going forward, not doing it anymore, or you can actually undo the things, remove the people who did this, reestablish the rule of law and the standards, reestablish that he's going to hold people who did this accountable, right? And that's not what we're seeing out of our Attorney General. What he said is, oh, I'm going to punt it to the Inspector General, and maybe if something was wrong at some point, I'll get rid of someone. Well, all this time, those people who thought it was appropriate to use the power of the DOJ to go into journalists and members of Congress, that they had to know that was wrong. First-year law students could tell you that is wrong, right? So they had to know it was wrong. And the problem is you can't actually fix this by simply, we're not going to do it anymore. You really got to undo what was done.
Right, and that's one of the really scary things, is that it wasn't just Trump. It was so many people within the Department of Justice. It was judges who were willing to go along with these subpoenas. It is so much deeper than Trump. But if you don't have somebody leading the DOJ whose interest is not kind of being an institutionalist, and aren't we seeing that same institutionalist thing that Garland has? It's the same thing we're seeing in Manchin. Mm-hmm. Is it just an excuse, like, to not do the hard stuff?
Absolutely. It's an excuse not to disrupt the power structure, and most especially wealthy, white, older men with power. That's what it is. Institutions are supposed to be more than just the sum of the people in them. They're supposed to endure. And what causes an institution to endure is norms and standards that everybody accepts. If somebody is in an institution and they corrode those norms and standards, then you have to remove that person. You don't protect the institution by allowing the battery acid to continue corroding the institution. You've got to remove it. Same thing with a cancerous entity in a body. You've got to remove it. You can't just leave it there and say, oh, I'm protecting the body by leaving the cancer there. No, you're not. You're allowing that body to get sicker and sicker. And you remember, there was this sort of legend in the GOP that everybody in government was a liberal and everybody in government was the deep state and everybody in government couldn't be trusted, and it was up to Donald Trump to put loyalists in government to shape government into the universe that they wanted. Nobody who's an institutionalist should be okay with that thinking. Period. And so my problem with Merrick Garland, and as if you follow me, I have a lot of problems with Merrick Garland. My problem is that his leadership is so lacking in coming out and saying, no, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And I'm going to remove those loyalists because they never should have been here in the first place. I'm going to remove those people who thought that their institution was there to serve Donald Trump because their values are not aligned with the values of the United States of America. And it is my job to do that. The people voted for that.
Exactly.
Joe Biden
and I think that's,
and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's such an important distinction. And that's the kind of fierceness that America needs right now. And I think America wants. Like, people are like, let's stop the bleeding, let's fix this and right things on their track. I remember I was in college and I wrote a paper on the Patriot Act, and people were freaking out about the Patriot Act originally. And you'd mentioned previously about how when they thought they were spying on brown people, that was fine. But then not using those same tools to root out the domestic terrorists and with the insurrection. I would love to hear your take on that and how we can play hardball on that too.
Absolutely. Back in the Patriot days, we were saying, look, we can understand the need for the Patriot Act because we were also, keep in mind, at that time, back in 9/11 timeframe, a lot of the cyber monitoring was still very new. And we were very vulnerable to what we called online radicalization, right? We were very concerned with sleeper cells and groups of people who could form all over the country, and it would be a threat that we couldn't see and that could be activated at any moment. We are far more cyber sophisticated now than we were then. But the threat is also far more sophisticated than it was then. As soon as we learned how to find chat groups, then they figured out a better way to go into the dark web and all this other stuff, right? And what we learned was, and what we also believed was, it's because these militias have been hanging around a long time. These Nazi groups and Proud Boys have been hanging around all the time. They were just never validated or financed, and that's the important part, because we're not talking about the money that made all of this possible, right? Mm-hmm. And so now people are like, well, how dare you treat these people as terrorists? Well, because they attempted a coup. They used violence to get their way. They were financed to do that. They plot and they planned to do that. They got inside the Capitol. They were 15 or 20 seconds away from assassinating them. You don't get to say it's no big deal because they just thought they were doing it for patriotic reasons. Every terrorist thinks they have a very good reason for the things that they're doing. Yes. And they also think that violence is the only way they can accomplish it, right? Yep. That is not
That's
new.
Such a great point. Yeah. No, this is it. It's the same pattern. It's because they're white and they're in the United States. It doesn't mean that their motives or their tactics are different. They're doing the same thing as the 9/11 hijackers did. It's the planning is Absolutely the same. Right. The purpose is the same. You're using violence to be able to change political outcomes that you don't like. That's terrorism. And we have to call it that. And we've got to where there is so little accountability right now in so many different areas, from January 6th to the Justice Department to it. Why? I mean, I understand why the Republicans don't want accountability because they're behind so much of this. Why aren't the Democrats fighting harder for accountability?
I I wish I actually had an answer to that. I will say this. I believe that Joe Biden, and again, he wasn't my top choice, but I respect the choice of my fellow Democrats and my fellow Americans. I want him to be nothing but successful. I've been cheering rah, rah, Joe and Kamala, go do your thing. But Joe Biden believes in an America that no longer exists. And he believes that his leadership can recreate that America, and it can't, because there's no way to lead people into the vision that he has, who are absolutely baked on never going back to the America that he loved. They are hoarding the power, and they are willing to do just about anything to hoard that power, and you cannot use convention to undo that. And I do think that his heart is in the right place. And I also think he is not inclined to clock people in the mouth. That is not his nature. That he's a collaborative. He's been in the Senate for decades. He believed that these people are acting in good faith, and that you can reason with these people. But the thing is, and it's an important point, when America was in absolute crisis, in the 30s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt didn't just gender an agreement with his view through reason. That dude was absolutely ruthless. He was willing to knock anybody in the mouth who needed to be knocked in the mouth. He was willing to expand the Supreme Court. That phrase that you may have heard, "a switch in time saves 9," that's because the threat was expanding the Supreme Court because they were trying to get in the way of New Deal legislation. If he was willing to do that, then why aren't we willing to do what needs to be done? I have to give credit to the Koch brothers, for being able to get their hooks into Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema with us kind of asleep at the wheel while they were doing that. Well, because they basically stymied our ability to do anything, and we cannot seem to reason with Kyrsten and with Joe Manchin. We can't seem to sway them. Yeah. And you are not going to use reason to get somebody out of a position they didn't reason their way into.
That's an excellent point. And I know you studied. Yeah, and I know you studied communications, and so I actually want to talk about this after the break. So everybody, will be right back with Pam Keith. We're going to be talking about Florida 2022, voting rights, the Russian-Ukrainian hit squads. But right now, we're going to our OFFS Awards ceremony because we have another nominee.
Our next nominee is Ronny Jackson. Now, many of us remember Ronny in his breakout role as the ambient-popping, booze-drinking, verbally abusive, sexually harassing doctor to then-President Donald Trump. But it wasn't nearly as impressive as his poker face while delivering the whopping lie, "Trump is in great physical shape." Now, we should have known he was destined to become a Republican member of Congress from Texas. But it's his brave performance in saying the quiet parts out loud that earned him tonight's nomination. Ronny's prescription for winning elections? Pick your voters. If an apple a day keeps Ronny away, I'll take 2.
Donald Trump is telling reporters he'll be back in the White House in August. Reinstated. The election overturned. President. Again. Trump thinks the big lie will put him back in the big job. Yeah, Donald, we have some bad news. Not happening. But the Lincoln Project is here to help. If you miss the White House that much, here's how to get back there. Visit the official website of your Congresswoman, Lois Frankel. Select Help Center, then Tours and Tickets. Next, select the tour that you're interested in. The White House. Enter your travel dates and contact information. Make sure to submit your request to Representative Frankel no less than 21 days in advance. And remember, White House tours may be subject to last-minute cancellation. Plan ahead. If you need further assistance, Donald, just reach out to the Lincoln Project. We are always there for you.
My name is Marion, and I'm calling you from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. First of all, I love the Lincoln Project. The worst injustice that the Orange Maniac did, it's very difficult to pick out one, but I guess the absolute worst is his lack and total disregard of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please keep on doing your work. Love it. Bye-bye.
I am so glad we were able to give the garbage guy a nomination this week.
Beep, beep. That's my best garbage truck impersonation.
Yeah, he deserves it. He deserves to live in one, be picked up by one. Yeah. So welcome back, everybody, to We're Speaking. We are here with Pam Keith. I'm so excited to have you for an extended interview, Pam. We want to talk Florida.
Yeah.
Yes. Interesting state.
Yeah, and I wanted to start off with the communications piece because it seems like Florida has a very prevalent, I don't want to call it a news network, but Fox. Fox seems to have a grip. And so you coming from the communications strategy angle, can you talk a bit about what it means to have Fox as the kind of news channel that's taken over Florida?
Right. Thank you for asking the question, because I think a lot of people, especially people who live in states that are purple or close to have big cities or whatever, don't understand the ubiquitousness of Fox News in Florida. If you, even in a place like Fort Lauderdale, if you go to get your nails done, there's going to be Fox News on the TV. If you go to get your car oil changed, that business is likely to have Fox News on there. It's sort of the default. Now, Fox News is not news. It's not even right-leaning news. It is a propaganda entity. It is an extension of the RNC, and it has absolutely no compunction in packaging complete lies as news. And what it does is it constantly generates outrage over these lies. In regular sort of Patriot Act speak, that's radicalizing. It is a radicalizing agent. It makes people mad at Dems and at liberals and at the presidency for stuff that is just fundamentally not true. I mean, think about the intention of saying that COVID-19 was a Democratic hoax. What is the intention there? It's to make everybody really mad at Democrats, right? And that's what it does. And it's ubiquitous. Sadly, there's absolutely nothing in the state of Florida that competes, right? Our institutions don't do that. Our churches don't really talk about it. We don't have a culture in Florida of really talking politics, and at the cafes and hanging out with friends, because people come to Florida to check out. They want to play golf. They want to do their bridge game. They don't want to talk politics. So it is the default mode. So you get that situation and you ask, okay, well, what do Democrats have to counter message that? And the answer is nothing. It's nothing. It's campaigns, when we have campaigns, and only those that have enough money, and usually just like September and October, right before the election, right? And that has been our habit, and that is why we are losing. We are losing because we have no counter messaging. The message in Florida right now, which is extremely effective, is that Ron DeSantis was 100% right in keeping Florida open because, look, Florida's booming. Right? Because there's no counter messaging saying, yeah, well, California is booming and Michigan's booming and Oregon is booming and Florida lost a bigger percentage of its population to COVID than all of those combined.
Wow.
Right? We have no
but that's never
counter-messaging.
said on Fox News, right?
Yeah, they would not.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
there is no propaganda equivalent on the left to which I mean is good and bad. But lying propaganda is, we don't want it on the right. It's not like we want to add.
We could have the feel good network. It's just going to be me shouting out,
Yeah,
positive
but
things
man,
to people.
People
at a minimum-
love getting outraged.
Yeah, they do.
We've become
they
an
do.
outraged
And if you give
society.
them- And what happens, and the purpose of that constant generation of outrage is to cause disbelief of anything that Democrats say. So if a Democrat says, hey, an earthquake is, a tsunami is coming, they're just going to disbelieve it because it's said by that person that I'm supposed to disbelieve. And that has created such a tectonic shift in our politics because we can't play off of commonly accepted facts. That is why you see the kind of voting legislation that you're seeing in Georgia, Florida, Texas, and elsewhere, is because they believe they get to legislate on their beliefs and thoughts and views without actually ever having to base them in any kind of provable fact. They are worried about, they think that voter fraud happened, ergo they get to legislate to prevent that when they've never proved it happened, and they've never proved that this particular move is going to stop that from happening, right? They're just, I feel this way and I don't ever have to prove it. So here in Florida, you know, to move forward, I say, look, we need to start thinking so much more strategically about counter messaging, not just not validating what they say or saying that they're stupid, right? Counter messaging says, hey, Ron DeSantis's way is the wrong way, because here is the evidence of the right way, right? That's a counter message.
You mentioned that messaging in Florida starts September or October. There's a huge infrastructure difference between the two parties in Florida, which is part of your mission of your organization that you've started, Fight for Florida's Future, which thank God you're doing this, because the Republican Party in Florida for a very long time has been incredibly organized, incredibly corrupt, but incredibly organized. And there is no Democratic equivalent. So can you talk to us about what your vision is for this organization and what Florida really needs?
Right. Well, the asymmetry in Florida politics is that the Republican Party believes that it's their job to win races and to control seats. The Florida Democratic Party feels like, okay, we hope people run for those seats, and we hope Democrats run good campaigns, and we hope they're well-funded. And if they aren't, well, then they must not have been really good candidates. So it's a completely different attitude, right? Where we have strong candidates that are well-funded, they can compete pretty well. But if they're in areas where they don't have a ton of money, or they can't bring it themselves, then, we just accept losing rather than actually pouring the resources to make them competitive so that we increase Dem turnout across the state. That infrastructure that the GOP has built is hand in hand with the Florida Chamber of Commerce. So it is heavily backed by consumer data, very, very important. It's year round. They spend all the year talking to their voters. They send emails. They invite them to events. They are constantly checking their voter information to make sure it's up to date. So that is why you see this, you have to re-register to vote by mail. Why would that give an advantage to Republicans if both sides use vote by mail? Well, it gives an advantage because the Republicans have the infrastructure to talk to their voters all the time. And on the Democratic side, the party does not talk to voters. The party talks to party members. Candidate campaigns are what talk to voters. And to some extent, nonprofits do that. But the voter contact vehicle on the Democratic side is not the party institution, it's the campaigns. And if the campaigns are weak or when they're not in existence, there's no communication at all. That is what Fight for Florida's Future is designed to mitigate. It's designed to create an entity that actually does communicate with voters, reaches out to voters, engages the community year round, and constantly updates data, contact information, and messaging to make up for that imbalance, right? So that we are no longer bringing a knife to a gunfight.
That's exactly right. And I love that your organization is data-driven. You've mentioned it a couple times tonight. And as a guiding principle, it's incredibly important because that's a lot of what helped Obama win. And I'm curious more about what the data tells you in Florida about where things are headed.
Okay, so there's data that we can say is like polling or focus groups or things like that. Then there's just data about what consumers are doing, right? Or what people are doing, what are they paying attention to? If you remember the really shady part of Cambridge Analytica, they got into finding people on Facebook and checking everywhere that they went on Facebook and literally what they posted so that they could do psyops on people. But what is regularly available out there to companies is if you decide you're in the market for a car and then the next time you go on your computer, all of a sudden there's a car banner ad. How does that happen? Well, all of that is basically the kind of data that's out there. There is really sophisticated data that can tell us so much about what consumers are doing, what voters are doing, because voters and consumers are functionally the same body of people. So what's going on is that on the Democratic side, what we have available to us is, the very basic voter roll information, age, race, gender, address, and whether you're registered as D, R, or non-party, right? That's what we know. Oh, how often did you vote, right? The GOP knows what magazines you have, whether you have a boat. Did you buy a gun this year? Do you have a special needs child? So should it surprise you that their messaging is a little more effective than ours? I mean, perfect example. We had a problem with socialism and Venezuelan voters and how badly we did in Miami-Dade County because of the moniker of being called socialists. Well, right after he became president, Joe Biden gave temporary protected status to Venezuelans so that their kids could be in public schools and they could work without fear of deportation. It really made things much, much better for recently immigrated Venezuelans. Now, wouldn't it have been a good idea to maybe put some ads on Telemundo to say, hey, gracias Joe Biden por TPS por los venezolanos? You're like, would that not be good? Like, wouldn't that be good to put on radio or to get t-shirts that say, hey, thank you, Joe Biden, right? We didn't do that. Why? Because our entity is not designed to do that. It's not designed to do that. The FDP does not do that. So who does? And the answer is no one.
And that's so
because when that happened, we were not in an election cycle.
Yeah, now's not the time to be humble about our accomplishments, and being humble doesn't save our democracy, which is what we're trying to do here at the Lincoln Project.
Exactly, it's penny wise, pound foolish. We can't get 10 million or 20 million invested now for infrastructure, but they're going to be happy to spend 100 million on ads in 1 month in October. Those ads make the TV stations very wealthy. They make some consultants very wealthy. They build nothing, right? And clearly they're not working. But if we invested now in real infrastructure, in real community engagement, and finding our voters, then we would actually have a chance of winning Florida because, just think of just one demographic, just one. Teenagers. 1.2 million teenagers in the state of Florida are going to be able to vote in 2022 who were not eligible to vote in 2020. 1.2 million. They are plus 35 points Democratic. So what's our strategy and our plan to engage them, get them voted?
Yep.
We need to get on TikTok.
And we saw how engaged they became. Our young voters came out in 2020 to not be building on that right now, to make sure in 22 we've got those kids and the ones who become eligible in those 2 years, like dying to be able to get to the polls. It's such a missed opportunity. Mm-hmm. I want to really thank you. You have made comments a couple of times on Twitter about understanding the big tent that we need to be pulling together right now. This is not Democrats and Republicans and independents all going in their separate directions. This isn't a policy battle. This is about democracy. We need to say the democracy first. The policy battles will still be there, and we can all argue about those after we make sure we still have a country where you're allowed to argue about policy. So
exactly.
You have been wonderful to point that out. We really appreciate it. The Lincoln Project appreciates it, and all the work that you're doing in Florida. So Pam, I wish we could keep you here all night and go a second hour because, man, we could talk for a long time.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back.
I would love to come back, and I do sincerely believe in the work of the Lincoln Project. We are all in this together to save our democracy. I don't need people to agree with me on everything or I'm a progressive, everybody knows that, but I speak centrist, I speak Republican. I can get why we have these policy differences, but we're Americans. And this thing that we have in America is so incredibly special. If you haven't gone out of this country and spent some time and tried to figure out why people want to come here so much, it's not because, they can have a big house or whatever. It's because they could live their dream. And it is our structure that allows that to happen. So we got to fight for it. And we got to be willing to throw some.
We definitely do. Well, Pam, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, and we will definitely check back in with you later on.
Absolutely, ladies, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, and her passion, her willingness to throw punches, and it's what the Republicans are doing it. And if we're not willing to engage on that level, it doesn't matter whether or not it's a fair fight, because we're not even engaging in the fight.
Right.
We've got to be willing to
fight and not just be on the defensive the
field.
entire time. Yeah, because it feels like it's like we're just playing defense, and it's like, no, we also need a good offense. And I like the fact that she says provoking things on Twitter, because right now, in order to get people's attention, in order to engage in the conversation, it kind of requires that we're playing on a different ball game right now. And so I absolutely love her energy. Up next is we have our next nominee for tonight's Offs Award.
Our last nominee for this week's Oh, for Fuck's Sake Award is Senator John Barrasso, more like Barasshole. John no more than adequately fills the role of guy at the office who serves as nothing but an obstacle to everyone else's success. Yeah, that guy, the one who thinks everyone's laughing at his jokes when it's really the spinach dip between his teeth. Beginning as a child star, John played asshole kid in preschool by kicking over other kids' Lincoln Log towers. Who can forget Barrasso's role as Mitch McConnell's hype guy when Mitch declared Republicans will be obstructionists and Barrasso said, yeah. Or his pitiful and derivative work, we are going to make Biden a half-term president. John, you might be the number 3 Republican in the Senate, but to us, you'll always be number 2.
Yep, that's about it.
I've been really enjoying those ceremonies. They've been.
Your hair looked amazing.
Really specially. Thank you. I'd like to say it was online, but I appreciate that anyway. We'll explain that in another episode.
Yes, we do. Right now, speaking of episodes, I don't know if you saw the breakdown last night. If you missed it, you actually missed quite a bit. Clint Watts, a former FBI special agent and expert on terrorism and Russian disinformation. He joined Tara and Rick to talk about January 6th and what went into the insurrection that day.
Behind the scenes, we know there was a huge organization doing that. And the organization's stated mission was to overthrow the U.S. government or stop democratic processes. The definition of terrorism is the use of violence or the threat of violence for political change or social or political change. That's what happened.
And that's from an expert on the topic, y'all. Wake up. It is time to wake up. There were terrorists, domestic terrorists. They weren't tourists. They weren't domestic tourists. They tried to overthrow our government, and they did it in the wide open. So you're hearing from all sorts of experts like this. You can catch the breakdown every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back after this message from the Lincoln Project.
We will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson, through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, through the streets of Birmingham. But we will march with the spirit of love and with the spirit of dignity that we have shown here today.
John Lewis. He was jailed and beaten, but never bowed. The son of sharecroppers, he was one of the first freedom riders. Attacked by a mob and left for dead in a bus station in Montgomery, Alabama, he got back up and led the fight for justice. That was John Lewis. He always got back up and never quit. Surrounded and assaulted by hate, he rejected violence and embraced love. For over half a century, he showed us the true meaning of courage and dignity. Today, America is in another crisis, and a new wave of hate is once again embraced by the powerful to hold on to their power. In the days ahead, let us be guided by the courage of John Lewis. He never quit. He always got up. He knew a better day belonged to those who had the courage to act. Now it's our turn.
We must say, wake up, America, wake up, for we cannot stop, and we will not and cannot be patient.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And welcome back to We're Speaking. The we're, you help us put the we're in that we are a community. And the conversation actually continues online. I'm sure it's going on right now in the chat because everybody loves to get chatty in the chat. But we also are on Twitter. And so we love to engage with you there. You can follow Lisa and I. Lisa's at LC Senecal, and I'm at Maya on Stage. And you can also tweet at us with the hashtag We're Speaking. So we love to hear from you. And you can also leave us a voicemail. Let me throw up our voicemail number. We love hearing your voicemails as well.
Yeah, the voicemails are a blast, and we really do. We read the tweets, we read your Facebook comments. We love hearing you from Instagram. So please keep it coming. We love the engagement with you folks because you are the Lincoln Project, and it's important that we're hearing your voices. Mm-hmm. Now, next time on We're Speaking, we're going to be talking about the constant, kind of hearkening back to what we were talking to Pam about, that constant stream of poisonous, venomous lies being injected into our politics and society by the GOP sedition and Blue Lives Don't Matter caucuses, Fox News, and of course, their minister of propaganda, Tucker Carlson, with his apparent Joseph Goebbels envy fetish problem that he has.
It's a problem. Yeah. And I unfortunately watch Fox just to kind of keep an eye on, keep your enemies closer sort of thing. And it's always, I watch it like I'm examining it. And so I try not to engage with it emotionally, but it is infuriating. The track record that they have of ignoring anti-democratic, racist propagandists with authoritarian sympathies has had a history of not actually ending very well. So if you're also angry about what the GOP is doing to our country, you should be. And if you're looking for ways to bend that arc of history back towards justice, join us.
Yeah, join us. And we want to share this.
We showed you the line between what we should be and what the radical edge of a dangerous anti-American movement wants us to become. It's the line between freedom and autocracy. In 2020, we set out to defeat Donald Trump. Trump lost, but the sick, poisonous ideology of authoritarian nationalist populism lived. Our mission now is to defeat it, to break it, to drive it out of American politics and life, to expose the funders, operators, and conspirators behind the plot to end American democracy. To work with anyone of good faith and strong heart willing to fight against the spreading darkness, to stop Trump's return, to stop Mitch McConnell from retaking the Senate, to stop Kevin McCarthy from retaking the House. It's all on the line, and it's even more dangerous than ever, because if they win, America doesn't just lose, America ends.
Yeah, the folks behind the scenes here are so excited about that ad as we are that we jumped into that a little bit prematurely, but it's an amazing ad and it just came out today. So we were all eager to be able to show that to everyone. That is the mission. This is a big tent, all hands on deck, everybody out on the field at the same time. We need everybody involved in the mission of saving our democracy, because as we were saying before, this isn't about left, right, center. It's literally about whether or not we're going to live in a country that is still a democracy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And being able to engage with people right now, we have to understand that, yes, it can be exhausting. So we're not saying you have to be on your A game all the time. But what we are saying is that you need to be aware that there is a very serious game that's being played right now. And we all have a responsibility to be a part of that. And so, this is where I say, like, gather with your friends. And on the Franklin Project, they actually have some really cool activities on their website that you can use to help engage in a conversation and learn how to talk about some of these issues so we can actually be engaged citizens. That's what this is going to take. And again, it's a nonpartisan issue at this point, because if we don't protect our voting rights, if we don't protect the rights of the marginalized, we are going to slip away into authoritarian rule. And that is not, it's alarming because it's true. Like, when I first listened to that ad, I was like, damn, I hate that this is true, but it's true.
Yeah, and it's really easy to sound like alarmists, but the people who are who sound like they're alarmists when real shit is happening, they don't sound like alarmists after it has happened. And
exactly,
we just have to stop it from happening. And then call us alarmists after it turns out that because we all got active, it was all okay. That's great. Love to have people say, see, the democracy's still here, but it's because we're all gonna make it happen together. And like Maya was saying, we have an opportunity to get tired and take rests if everybody is actively engaged, because we can tag team. You can tap out occasionally when you need to.
Yes.
Just make sure you've got a posse with you that's going to be able to step in and pick it up when you need a break. So one of the earlier in the show, we shared some of your tweets and Facebook comments when we had asked what is the greatest injustice that the Trump administration had done. And so we want to make sure that we're looking at the vision of where we're trying to take this country together. So we want to make sure that we are also highlighting your thoughts on what making it better is going to look like.
Yeah, your responses were incredibly powerful, and we definitely want to share a few here.
Yeah, the first one, Alicia Hamilton Jenkins: fair taxes, voting rights for all, access to healthcare and education, equality, livable wage, justice reform.
That's nice things to have. Barbara Hummel says justice would absolutely mean Trump in prison where he belongs. I agree with that one.
I do too. And he could have some company, and we'd be happy to offer up some other names of folks if anyone needs some suggestions, starting with a couple of his children. Kathy Henderson: every citizen paying fair share of taxes. What a concept.
Which means Black people should pay less in taxes. You know my stance on that.
I
do.
I
want to pay less taxes. We already paid our fair share. We also have George Hartnell, who says, with liberty and justice for all, we get in the most trouble when we break our own rules. True that.
Yeah, Liz Birch: make voting easily accessible to everyone. Yes. Let's do that. Let's stop passing laws that is the freaking opposite of making it easy for everybody to vote. Let's pass some legislation on the federal level to, maybe stop the crazy states that are doing this shit.
Yeah. Annie Cookie: now I want a cookie. Thanks, Annie. That's all I can think about. This entire tweet to me now just says cookie, cookie, cookie. I would like to see justice in all legal areas, from policing to sentencing. And justice in education would mean equality in supplies, building, books, and whatever resources are needed where they are needed.
And Karen Turn Iowa Blue Goolery: UBI, free public 4-year college and trade schools, minimum wage tied to inflation, federal job guarantees, reparations, and land back. And that UBI, that's the universal basic income.
And then, yes, I would love an allowance from the government. Terry Therese says leveling the playing field for all Americans, protect voting rights, have government-funded elections so no one is beholden to corporations or lobbyists, major investments in education and teachers, and an equal justice system for everyone would be a good start. I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with some of it. Some of it I can argue round or flat, and that's one of the things I want us to be able to get back to really focusing on is that policy stuff. But policy comes after save the democracy, then we can have nice things. Yes, that's the first one.
Yeah, I definitely think
Yeah,
no, I was thinking about saving our democracy, and I was just picturing the defibrillator and the little things, and it's like we're running in and going like clear, like it's at that level. It's not flatlining, but it's close, and so that's and that's why we're here.
Yeah, it is close.
Yeah, yes, it is close. We're speaking.
Yeah. So we're speaking. Obviously, the name was inspired by Kamala Harris during the presidential debates. But to be clear, what sets us apart is that unlike regular news programs that speak to you, we're speaking with you. And this isn't just a broadcast. We're building a community, and you are a beautiful, important part of it.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note we don't always have to agree. Lisa and I don't agree on everything. I mean, like most everything, but we don't agree on everything. And we can still get along. And it's important, like diversity of perspectives. Yes, to you too. Maybe the problem with diversity, that we need to rename it variety, because everybody loves variety. Maybe it just needs a rebrand. But we have a variety of followers. And it's important for everybody to get involved and feel engaged. And so I think it's important that in those tweets that we show that everybody has a wide variety of ideas of what justice means. And it's important to have a healthy discourse, to have a healthy democracy. So we see you, we hear you, and we want to remind you, don't just tune in, take part. All right? It's important.
Absolutely.
So it's at that time. We've made it to that time. We are going to announce our OFFS winner for the week. Here it is.
The winner of this week's OFFS Awards is Ronny Jackson. Yes, saying the quiet parts out loud has been performed by a lot of GOP bad actors, but nobody does it quite like Ronny. Here's his performance in If You Can't Beat 'Em, Cheat 'Em. That's right. The Ambien popping, booze drinking, verbally abusive, sexually harassing, disgraced doctor to twice impeached ex-president Donald Trump now stars in the role of congressman from Texas. Because who's better prepared for the role? His prescription for winning in the midterms? Choose your voters on a partisan basis. Well, our voters choose you, Ronny, for our OFFS Award. And I'm sure that's a bitter pill to swallow.
Such a deserving fellow. I'm really unhappy for him. Yes, the garbage man.
Yeah,
well, from the worst of us, we want to turn our attention to close out the show to the best of us, lifting up marginalized voices. It's really important to this show. It's important to us. And so we want to say thank you to the member of the Las Vegas Raiders, the defensive end, Carl Nassib. This week, he was the first active NFL player to come out as gay, which is huge, huge.
What's up, people? I'm Carl Nassib. I'm at my house here in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Just want to take a quick moment to say that I'm gay. I've been meaning to do this for a while now, but I finally feel comfortable enough to get it off my chest. I really have the best life. I got the best family, friends, and job a guy could ask for. I'm a pretty private person, so I hope you guys know that I'm really not doing this for attention. I just think that representation and visibility are so important. I actually hope that one day videos like this and the whole coming out process are just not necessary. But until then, I'm going to do my best and do my part to cultivate a culture that's accepting, that's compassionate, and I'm going to start by donating $100,000 to the Trevor Project. They're an incredible organization. They're the #1 suicide prevention service for LGBTQ youth in America, and they're truly doing incredible things. And I'm very excited to be a part of it, to help in any way that I can. And I'm really pumped to see what the future holds. That's all I have for you guys. I hope you have a great day.
I cried twice when I saw that original post, and I'm tearing up now because seeing him so joyful about being able to live his authentic truth is so very important for kids around the world to see. It has been a very difficult year for LGBTQ youth. And the fact that he's using his platform to speak up, the fact that he's donating money, $100,000, and encouraging other people to do so is huge. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Trevor Project, it's an incredible organization. And so the work that he's doing and partnering with them, it will help save lives. And that's the kind of America that I want to live in, where we work together to do that.
Yeah, it was an incredible thing to do. There have been other NFL players after they'd retired who had come out, but to do this while he's still an active player is incredibly meaningful. And the embrace that he has received from his teammates and his coaches, and even Roger Goodell, not a huge fan, but here he came through and has handled this beautifully. So our thanks goes out to Carl for his leadership. Lives and hearts are going to be changed because of what you did.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful way to end the show. So be kind, be good, live your authentic self, and know that the people that love you will surround you and support you in that. And so, I love leaving it on that note. We will be back next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Good night, everybody.
Well, they're burning the house down.
Please protect yourself.
Vice President speaking.
This is an embarrassment. If you count the legal votes, I easily win.
What the fuck?
Have some faith, I'll make you a believer.